各位傳媒朋友早晨，多謝大家今朝嚟呢個記者
Morning,
會。
friends of the media.
稍後行
Welcome
政
to
長
the
官會
media
先向
briefing.
大
In a
家發言，
moment,
之
the
後會
chief
接受大
executive
家
will
嘅
say a
提
few
問嘅。
words, and then she'll
如
take
果各位記者
questions
朋
from
友
the
而家冇
floor.
問題，我哋先請行
Now,
政
can
長
I
官發
invite
言。
the chief executive to speak?
各位傳媒朋友、各位香港市民，
Friends
早
of the
晨。
media,
就
members
我
of
今
the
朝主
public.
要係會再綜合回應下有關於中華人民共和國香港特別行政區維護國家安全法喺自6月30日生效之後嘅工作進度，同埋當然回應大家嘅提問啦。由於今朝嘅時間有限，咁所以慣常我喺呢個場合講保就業嘅情況咧，稍後我哋會以新聞公報嘅形式同大家交代。
Give you an update on the employment support scheme, but I think instead I will issue a press release later to give you the details. Now, with the implementation of the law, there's been much overseas concerns. So I will be highlighting the key points in English after I speak in Cantonese. As I said, on the 30th of June, the national law, that is the law of the People's Republic of China on safeguarding national security in the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, was promulgated, and it came into effect at once. On the very same day, the Hong Kong HKSAR government took swift action to put in place the important national law. We've taken several actions, primarily. Firstly, on the 3rd of July, we set up the Committee for Safeguarding National Security of the Hong Kong HKSAR, which chaired by me. And this committee held the first meeting yesterday on the 6th of July, that is. I must stress that for the meetings of the committee and the discussions of the committee, they would not be disclosed. Yesterday, we issued a press release for the first meeting, but in future we won't be disclosing any details about the work of this committee. The National Security Advisor appointed by the Central People's Government, Mr. Luo Huining, attended the first meeting yesterday. The second action we took was that we have set up the relevant dedicated department and other institutions. On the 1st of July, we set up the National Security Department, and there is also a dedicated department set up under the Department of Justice. So both units have been set up. And for the National Security Department, the head has been appointed as Ms. Edwina Lau. For the prosecutions, National Security Prosecutions Division, the head will be announced later. But as for the other government council working in the division, they will be appointed by the Secretary for Justice. There are also other important appointments.
反映喺法律方面呢，係要求我提名，由中央作出呢個任命。咁所以特首辦主任陳國基係獲得中央任命，成為國安委嘅秘書長嚇。喺呢段時間呢，當然佢仍然係兼任行政長官嘅辦公室主任。就上個星期五，因為有一個緊急嘅個案需要處理，亦都係我徵詢咗國安委啦，同埋亦都係徵詢咗終審法院嘅首席法官，就委任咗首批嘅裁判嘅官。咁但係陸陸續續咧喺其他各級嘅法院呢個指定法官咧將會係獲得指定，咁到時再向大家交代啦。就第四方面嘅工作就係要有效去執行呢個國安法，特別係有關於國安處，即係話喺警務處裏邊特別成立嘅國安處去執行呢條法律。用好法律賦予佢哋嘅一啲措施同埋權力，即係話喺呢條條例嘅第43條咧，昨天嘅首次會議。
So it has to use the relevant. It has to they need to follow certain rules. So we already announced gazetted implementation rules. I'm sure you will have questions on that. As for the Central People's Government, we have they have appointed a certain personnel. For example, the national security officer that I mentioned, and also in Hong Kong, the
負責人處長咧就係鄭雁雄先生啦，兩位副手咧亦都係獲得委任啦。
the office for
需要重申咧。
the Office for Safeguarding National Security of the Central People's Government in Hong Kong, HKSAR, the head has been appointed, Mr. Zhang Rong. And also we are going to enforce the law rigorously. We will try to do our best to safeguard national security. So I must remind those radicals who advocated various acts that endanger the country. Well, you must not try to challenge the law because the consequences would be serious. Another thing I'd like to report to you is that this law has been enforced for a week. I've heard various comments, so I would like to give an overall response to some of the fallacies put forward. Now, this is a national law, so for the process of enacting the law, this is not something that's the same as in Hong Kong, to which we're familiar. And we are talking about national security, so there may be some concerns or among the people, and they may not understand certain points, and that's fully understandable. So that's why I and my colleagues have the duty to keep explaining the law to the public, so people will have a proper understanding of each of the provisions of the law. But I must stress that the objective of the law is stated clearly. It is to prevent, curb, and sanction four types of criminal acts that endanger national security. So it will only target just a handful of people who break the laws, and the law will protect the majority of law-abiding citizens so that they could continue to enjoy their rights and freedoms as enshrined in the law, in the various laws. Now, I'm glad to see that in the past few days that some have come to acknowledge that there is a positive aspect of the law, that is, it will help to promote stability and prosperity in Hong Kong. And you can see in the market that's been the direction taken. Now, there are some, especially overseas media, saying that Hong Kong is doomed, Hong Kong has no more a future. It seems that that argument cannot stand. But Mr. Zhang Xiaoming, the director of the Hong Kong and Macau Affairs Office, said that with time and as the facts will prove that the national security law will actually allow the ship of one country, two systems to sail far and steady, and it will benefit the future of Hong Kong. Now, I would like to respond and clarify certain of the fallacies in arguments advanced on three aspects. First of all, the national security would undermine one country, two systems, or there's a declaration that one country, two systems has met its demise. But I'm telling you is the exact opposite. As I said earlier, the purpose of the national security law is to allow the sale of one country, two systems to sail far and steady. So the national security law will allow us to come to renew our understanding of the constitutional order. And we have to defend one country before there is a solid foundation for two systems. Now, on the important issue of national security, we cannot safeguard it. How can we even talk about two systems? Now, some say that the national security law will undermine the one country, two systems. I think there is a hidden agenda in such a saying. Now, one country is the foundation of two systems, and that's been described as a red line. It's been made very clear to all sectors in the community over the years. But then there are people who, if they keep challenging this red line and this bottom line of the government of the country, this is a resolute response to that, that is to say that such sort of behavior cannot be tolerated. Now, Of course, the central People's Government has overarching responsibility on safeguarding national security, and Hong Kong also has this constitutional duty to safeguard national security. It's exactly because the CPG has overarching responsibility, so that's why there is need for a national security officer appointed by the CPG for us to help us enforce national security law. There's also a need to set up the Office for Safeguarding National Security of the Central People's Government in the Hong Kong HKSAR, so that together we could perform our duties in safeguarding national security. So all such actions are in line with one country, two systems. It will actually reinforce the foundation of one country, two system. As Mr. Zhang said, if one country is better protected, there is better protection for two systems too. So the national security law will not undermine one country, two systems, but rather it will allow the one country, two systems to develop further and meet the aspirations of the people of Hong Kong for long-term stability and prosperity. The second fallacy is that this is a draconian law, that it has no regard to human rights and freedoms. So fear is being instilled against this law. In fact, in the past week, we don't see much fear really. If so, it's only because someone has been trying to promote right terror, or maybe some people are scared that they may break the law, so they take certain actions. But as I have stressed repeatedly, since the 28th of May, the National People's Congress passed this decision to enact a law, and the principles have been stated clearly, that is, we have to make sure there is a proper protection of human rights and freedoms under the basic law and under the two international covenants that apply to Hong Kong. So it is within this context that human rights and freedoms must be protected. And the national security law only target 4 types of serious criminal acts that would undermine national security. And these acts are spelled out clearly so people will not fall foul of the law unknowingly. Now, some have expressed concern, particularly the legal sector, about certain important principles such as presumption of innocence, no double jeopardy, and so on. All these principles are actually spelled out in the national security law. So I've heard many legal experts, especially those with international experience, who say that this law is not draconian law. In fact, compared to the national security laws of other countries, it's a rather mild piece of legislation. Now, even for our own country's national security law, it covers a much wider range. Because national security also includes financial security, food security, environment security, and so on. But this law only targets 4 types of urgent matters. So it does not undermine the human rights and freedoms of Hong Kong, but rather this law will protect the rights and freedoms of most people of Hong Kong. And now, if you ask many people, since June, they felt that they've lost the freedom to go and patronize any shop or to walk on the street. They didn't even lost their freedom of speech because then they would be the targets of attacks by radicals. So the law should not be causing fear, but rather the law should allow Hong Kong to return to peace and calm and stability. Now, the protection of human rights and freedoms could be seen in the implementation rules announced last night. Now, some said that the implementation rules have expanded our powers, but it's actually the opposite again. The law allows the National Security Department of Hong Kong Police Force to invoke any powers given under existing laws of Hong Kong to the police force. And under Article 43, the police force may also take 7 measures. If we don't spell out the details, and these powers and measures are almost absolute. But exactly because we want to make sure that we would protect human rights and freedom, so therefore we have spelled out the 7 measures in detail, and for each measure we give the details, that is under what circumstances these measures could be taken, and what conditions have to be met, and who have to give approval for these measures to be taken. So this will allow us to better protect human rights, and also will give assurance to the public. Actually, if people are law-abiding, they never think about endangering national security. There is no cause for concern whatsoever. The third allegation is that if there's national security law that involves Hong Kong, the law should be enacted in Hong Kong by the Legislative Council. It should not be secretly enacted in Beijing. Even the Hong Kong SL government has been kept in the dark in the process. Again, this is wrong. As I said, firstly, this is a national law. Of course, if it's a national law, it will have to be decided by the CPG as to how to enact the law. Now, basic law states clearly that for matters of national defense or foreign affairs that's outside the jurisdiction of Hong Kong, this is a matter for the CPG. No one would question that national security is something outside the high degree of autonomy. It is a matter of the sovereignty of the country. And then in Article 18 of the Basic Law, now there's a process that allows national laws to be added to Annex 3 for implementation in Hong Kong through a specified procedure. And the third point is the political reality. If you believe, given the current political reality, given the current Legislative Council, there could be rational discussion in the Council so that law on national security could be passed. Well, I think that's unrealistic, so that's the political reality. The fourth point is that the National People's Congress is the highest organ of power in the People's Republic of China, and so you know, therefore, the status of this law as is made by the Standing Committee of the NPC. Now, another point is that the Hong Kong SL government has been kept in the dark. That is, of course, not true. The CPG has heard the views of many people in formulating this law, and that includes, of course, the views of myself and the SL government. On the 18th of June, Mr. Shen Chunyao presented this the draft of the law, and he said that although the time frame was tighter, they met with many people, they heard many views, and they've repeatedly heard the views of the chief executive and principal officials. Now, on the 3rd of June, before a draft was even available, of course, we were arranged to go to Beijing. There is some leading team, that is Vice Premier Han Zhang and other senior leaders met with us to listen to our views. And after that, they repeatedly sought our views on the draft law. Now, why is there this fallacy saying that I was kept in dark, I knew nothing about the law? Well, I could check. I checked the record 2 weeks ago on the 13th of June. I was here to answer an English question. At that time, the assumption of the question was that you guys have not seen the law. That is, we knew nothing about the law. My response at the time was that at that point, the Hong Kong SAR did not. 我哋當時冇睇過全部嘅法。 So this was, so we have not seen the complete law, and then that's being interpreted as that we have seen nothing, we knew nothing, and we were kept totally in the dark, and until the law was promulgated on the 30th of June. Well, I think that's stretching the imagination a bit here. it is rather eye-opening. So I must make this clarification today. And finally, in the coming days and months, I and principal officials will continue to explain the content of national security law and its implementation to the public. But of course, as I said, the work of the committee would not be disclosed because the national security does involve very sensitive and intricate issues. And we will step up education at schools and so on, so that people will better understand the national security law, and we want to prevent them from being misled. This afternoon, the Secretary for Justice and the Secretary for Security will attend a joint panel meeting of the Legislative Council to answer questions from members of the Legislative Council. Now I will repeat my points in English briefly.
Ladies and gentlemen, the national security law came into effect on the 30th of June. Since then, swift actions have been taken to implement this very important piece of legislation, including, first, establishment of a committee for safeguarding national security of the Hong Kong SAR, which held its first meeting yesterday. I was in the chair of this committee. It was also attended by the National Security Advisor appointed by the central government, Mr. Loh Hui Ling. We have also established specialized enforcement and prosecution departments, respectively, in the Hong Kong Police Force and the Department of Justice. We have also appointed key personnel, including the National Security Committee Secretary General, Mr. K.K. Chan, and the head of the Police National Security Department, Ms. Edwina Lau, as well as the first batch of designated judges at the magistracy level in order to handle a first case of offense brought under the law. We have made relevant implementation rules for the police to use or to carry out the 7 measures in Article 43 of the National Security Law yesterday, which takes effect today. On the part of the central government, they have approved the setting up of the CPG Office for Safeguarding National Security and also the appointment of the National Security Advisor that I have just mentioned. I want to reiterate that this is a very important piece of legislation, and the central government has placed full trust and faith in the Hong Kong SAR. So the Hong Kong SAR government will vigorously implement this law, and I forewarn those radicals not to attempt to violate this law or crossing the red line, because the consequences of breaching this law are very serious. Now, the law has been in effect for 1 full week. I would like to give a consolidated response and to clarify some misrepresentations or misperceptions. But let me first say that given this is a piece of national legislation and the way that this legislation has been enacted is different. It's different from the local legislation that process. So it is only understandable that people in Hong Kong, they have some concerns, they have some queries about the content of this piece of legislation and also its implementation. So we will do our utmost to explain to the people of Hong Kong what this law is all about. What this law is all about is very simple. It aims to prevent, curb, and punish 4 types of acts and activities that will endanger national security of the country and also, of course, in Hong Kong. It only targets a very small minority of people who breach the law. At the same time, it will protect the overwhelming majority of Hong Kong citizens in exercising their legitimate rights and freedoms. I'm pleased to say that in the last few days, I noticed, you may dispute that, but I noticed that there has been an increasing appreciation of the positive effect of this national security legislation, particularly in restoring stability in Hong Kong, as reflected by some of the market sentiments in recent days. Surely, this is not doom and gloom for Hong Kong. I'm sure with the passage of time and efforts and the facts being laid out, confidence will grow in one country, 2 systems, and in Hong Kong's future. Now, let me try to respond to several areas of concerns or unfounded allegations. Allegation number 1 is this law signifies the death of one country, two systems, or this very important principle is now being put in jeopardy. The answer from me is exactly the opposite. The national security law aims to affirm and improve the implementation of one country, two systems by addressing risks of undermining national security, which is a matter within the purview of the central government. Enacting national security legislation to protect sovereignty, territorial integrity and unity is invariably the power and duty of the state in all countries. One country is the foundation of two systems, and this foundation will be seriously shaken if territorial integrity is being compromised and national security is put at risk. This is a red line which should be very familiar to many of us, and it should not be crossed. Given the escalating national security risks that we have seen since June last year, and the inability of the Hong Kong SAR, not just the government, but also the Legislative Council, to enact local legislation, the central government has to take resolute actions to safeguard the country's interests and to preserve one country, two systems. By the same token, in discharging the central government's responsibility over national security, the national security law provides for the setting up of a CPG office on national security in Hong Kong and reserving for the central government jurisdiction to handle offenses under very specified circumstances. And I believe these specified circumstances will be rare and through a very clear approval mechanism. These are all legitimate acts of the central government to fulfill the one country requirement under the principle of one country, two systems. The second allegation is this piece of law is very draconian and it will undermine people's freedoms and spread fear amongst Hong Kong citizens. Well, first of all, I have not seen a widespread of fears amongst Hong Kong people in the last week. And my response is, as some of the legal experts have commented in the past few days, this national security law is actually relatively mild as far as national security laws are concerned. First, its scope is very defined and confined. It only deals with 4 types of acts and activities endangering national security. And the offenses are clearly defined in law. The legal principles that we attach a lot of importance to, like presumption of innocence and no retrospective effect and so on, they are being upheld. The law respects and protects human rights as provided for under the Basic Law and relevant provisions in the 2 international covenants as applied to Hong Kong. So I would submit that instead of undermining people's freedom, the national security law will restore stability and helps ensure the great majority of Hong Kong people could exercise their rights and freedoms without being intimidated or attacked. So instead of spreading fear, the law actually removes fear and let Hong Kong people return to a normal, peaceful life. And Hong Kong will resume her status as one of the safest cities in the world. Our respect and protection of human rights is also demonstrated in the making of those detailed implementation rules that we announced yesterday and took effect today. The rules were made by the Chief Executive together with the National Security Committee at its inaugural meeting yesterday, and they laid down very clear processes, prerequisites, and authorizations before the police in the National Security Department can resort to the measures and power under Article 43 of the law. Finally, the third allegation is any national security law should be enacted in Hong Kong by the Legislative Council and not drafted in secret in Beijing, even keeping the Hong Kong SARG and the Chief Executive in the dark. My response is, first, this is a piece of national law concerning matters outside of Hong Kong's high degree of autonomy. It's like defense and foreign affairs. Secondly, it is in line with Basic Law Article 18, which provides for the listing of national laws to Annex 3 and then promulgate for implementation in the Hong Kong SAR. Third, I have to admit that by now it should be wishful thinking for us to expect LegCo in the current political climate to pass any national security law. Fourth, the NPC is the highest organ of power in the People's Republic of China and has the authority to enact laws on national security, just like any other governments all over the world. And fifthly, the NPC Standing Committee, in preparing the draft legislation under delegated authority, has actually listened to views expressed by many people and has taken into account Hong Kong's actual situation. Specifically, the National People's Congress Standing Committee has listened to views of the Chief Executive, that is myself, and Hong Kong SAR government key officials several times and taken on board our suggestions. Therefore, it is much regretted that my comment made on the 23rd of June in this forum, in response to a media inquiry, that the Hong Kong SARG has not seen complete details of the proposed legislation, was misrepresented or deliberately exaggerated as Hong Kong SARG being totally kept in the dark. That is not the truth. Finally, in the days ahead, I and my senior colleagues will continue to explain the provisions in the law and put in place effective enforcement mechanisms. We will also enhance publicity and school education to better Hong Kong people's understanding of this important piece of legislation so that they will not be misled. This afternoon, the Secretary for Justice and the Secretary for Security and their colleagues will attend Legislative Council joint panel meeting to answer any members' questions. 睇下大家有咩提問。
Questions. The floor is now open for questions. Please raise your hands and then please